Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome to the Networking RX podcast. I'm your host, Frank Agin, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections. Today we have another great guest. As our ongoing subscribers know, often on this podcast, I'll be sharing ideas and insights and best practices for building professional relationships and how to excel at professional networking. And we also have a segment called Expedition Networking, where we bring professionals on and share about their journey, their business, and how networking played a role. Occasionally, however, I will be interviewing subject matter experts, authors, speakers, thought leaders, social scientists, and so on. And these people share their knowledge to help us build relationships, as well as understand why, as humans, we interact the way we interact. Today's guest is such an expert. Today I have on the program Michael Whitehouse, and he is a connector, motivational speaker, and he refers to himself as a geek around town. He's the author of a book that's called "The Guy Who Knows a Guy," and which we're going to talk a little bit about, not the whole thing. Go buy the book, "A Guy Who Knows a Guy," but it's a fun, approachable book on networking, and he's got a very interesting story. I'll just kind of set it up a little bit here. He lives in Groton, Connecticut, but he hasn't always lived in Groton, Connecticut. He moved to Groton, Connecticut, not knowing anybody. And within a short time, he networked himself into kind of being a fixture, if you will, in the community. So anyhow, Michael, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Glad to be on the program. So always interesting to hear those bios and be like, wow, that guy sounds awesome. I want to meet. Oh, you're talking about me? Neat. Oh, I am pretty cool. Look at that.
Yeah. How about that? So you're in Groton, Connecticut. For those who don't know, it's on the southern shore of Connecticut, or on I guess, is that Long Island Sound?
Yes. Okay. Which is the only shore Connecticut has. But yeah, we're okay. The lower right corner, where I'm about 10 minutes from Rhode Island. And we are the submarine capital of the world. I know that because there's a big sign when you come into town that says submarine capital of the world. It's actually where the submarine was invented. Where it was first actually practically invented, they built one that really worked. So the major submarine base and submarine factory is here. And all of this I learned after I moved here.
You moved here. I was reading your book. The Guy Who Knows a Guy is the name of the book. And you moved there from another town in Connecticut, didn't know anybody.
Yes. So we moved here fairly precipitously. About 7 months earlier, my now wife and I, we'd gotten pregnant because we decided, like, this is a good time. We're making the most money we've ever made. Everything's stable and comfortable, and we're good to go. Like, now's the time to start a family. And there's the old saying that if you want to make God laugh, make plans. So by 9 months later, we had both left our jobs. We had moved. Everything was totally tossed up in the air. So we moved because my wife's job changed and she works in property management. So our housing was attached to her job. We had 30 days to be somewhere else. So we needed to find a place we could get into quickly. She knew some property managers out in Groton, which is the upside of working in property management, as you know, people. And so we moved to this apartment and we visited it once. We said, this is good enough. Let's go. Didn't know anything about the town. Landed here like we were dropped out of the sky. And at the time, I was trying to start a consulting business, which didn't really have a plan or a strategy or a business, really. But I knew that I needed to have connections and I needed to have some kind of network going. I'd done networking in the past for other businesses that I'd done. And so I said, I'm just going to take networking, turn it up to 11, meet everyone I can, and see what happens. And by 2 years later, now this is a New England town, and New Englanders are kind of known for this. One of the jokes is where's your grandfather from?
Right.
Oh, your grandfather's someone else? Well, you're new here, but that's okay. Yeah, we'll still welcome you. I mean, I joke that some people like got off the Mayflower, walked down to Groton, built their house, and they've been here ever since. And that's not that far off the mark for some people. I know some people who go back they go back to the 1700s, sometimes living in the same house. So I thought it might be challenging, but I didn't know what I didn't know. For one thing, I just kind of started going networking events, and one person turned me on to the Eastern Connecticut Chamber of Commerce. So I started going to their events, and then found other events, started going to those events. And 2 years later, I was reached out to from the chairman of one of the local political parties, political committees, who said, we have an opening on the representative town meeting, and you're my first pick for it. So let me know, yes or no. I'm not calling anyone else until you give me your answer, yes or no. And I said, how can I say no to that? Yes. So I got into town office because they asked me to. I was asked to join the Groton Rotary Club, and I'm now the president of the Groton Rotary Club. Again, they asked me to do it. And this is from 2014, knowing nobody. 2016, hey, you want this elected seat? 2017, would you like to begin the process of training to be the president? And I wrote the book in 2017 because I realized I knew a lot of people. And not only that, but here in New England, people don't tend to travel from town to town so much. So people in New London know people in New London. People in Groton know people in Groton. People in Westerly know people in Westerly. So I felt like the medieval merchant who was bringing news from the next kingdom over. And I drop a name of someone who everybody knows in New London, in Groton, and people say, who's that? And so I realized I knew people that the people whose families went back 300 years did not know, because when you feel connected, you don't feel the need to connect more. So they knew who they knew. They weren't actively reaching out. Whereas I kind of almost had this networking inferiority complex. I could never know enough people. So I was always reaching out, always going to events, always making connections. And I realized I was doing it in a fairly formulaic way that could be written down. I had a mindset that could be described and emulated. And since I knew what I was doing, I could write it down and thus put it in a book. And that's what The Guy Who Knows a Guy is the story and the strategy that I use to go from knowing nobody to knowing, I don't want to say everybody, but quite a few people.
Right. Again, I don't want to dissect the whole book. Buy the book, A Guy Who Knows a Guy, Michael Whitehouse. I get my cut. No, I'm kidding. But seriously, there's a lot in the book, but you say you went to networking events, and I'm sure there are people on here who are listening saying, well, I go to networking events and I don't know anybody.
Yeah.
So I guess the $1 million question is, what are you doing when you're at these networking events? I mean, there's something happening that you're endearing yourself to the people in Groton and New London and so on and so forth.
So the first thing is the mentality of you're going there to see what you can do for other people. If you go into these events looking for what you can take, then people are going to feel that, and they're not going to like it. In the book, I describe the character Dispro, who is desperate to make a deal, and the way I explain it is that most women who have been to a party have had this experience of meeting the guy who's got one thing on his mind, and he's going to make sure she knows about it. Most men have not had that experience, but if they've been to a networking event, they have, because they've met the salesman who has one thing on his mind, and he wants to get his hand on your wallet, and you can really feel that, and you're just like, oh, get me out of this conversation, get me away from this person. And so the people, so that's sometimes why someone's not getting good responses, because they're there to sell, they're there to do some business. And if you're like that, you're not gonna get a response. But the other thing is, even if you go there for the right reasons, so like I'm here to connect, I'm here to help, but I don't really know anybody. How can I help? And it's a matter of instead of limiting yourself and limiting your beliefs, think, well, I know somebody, so let me figure out how I can help. And by starting that thought process, you can then work the muscle. So, if you're really weak and you want to get stronger, you start by lifting the heaviest thing you can, which might be 5 pounds. And then you lift something at 7 pounds, and then 9 pounds. Same thing with networking. You go to people and you say, hey, who are you looking to meet? Who can I connect you with? And an example I use, and it's funny, this is a story I've told enough times, I can't remember if it really happened or not. I don't know if I made it up or if it's real, but the concept is true either way.
Well, we'll go with it.
Yeah, we'll pretend it's true. And certainly things like it have happened. That I talked to the first person, and it was a realtor, and we had a nice little chat. And I don't know anyone looking for a house, looking to sell a house, but great to meet you. Took your card, whatever. Met the second person, had a nice chat. Talked to the third person. Now I now know exactly 3 people in the room, including the third person I'm talking to. And in the course of conversation, they say, "Well, I'm really looking to connect with realtors." Realtors? There's a realtor right over there. Have you met this one? Oh, no, I haven't. Well, let me introduce you. I know 3 people in the room. I introduced 2 of them together. I found this even with my coaching. At one point, I had 8 clients, 3 pairs of whom were working together. They're good to introduce. So out of 8 of them, 6 of them had connected to other people among those 8. So often, even in a very small group of people, there are 2 or more of them who want to connect. So if you're just thinking someone in this room needs to meet, I'm going to connect them together. Suddenly you're a connector, because all a connector is someone who connects. It's not like, the networking authority taps you on the shoulder and says, "You are a connector." It's, did you connect someone? Good, you're a connector. And so when you go into that mindset of, I'm just here to take the resources in this room and bring them together, it makes you valuable, and it makes you then feel valuable, which empowers you to approach strangers and introduce yourself and say, hi, because they want to meet you because you're bringing some value to the table, even if it's simply remembering who you've already talked to that night. And because everyone's as shy or more shy than you are. So that's one of the big things to remember.
Well, and it seems to me, in my experience, it gets easier as time goes on, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, and the example I like to use is, you and I are on this Zoom call recording this interview. There's one conversation. Now, we may change topics, but there's one conversation. We bring in a third person. We'll call him Matt Ward, because we both know Matt Ward. But Matt Ward's here. All of a sudden, there's 3 conversations. The conversation Matt and I can have, the conversation you and Matt can have, and the conversation that you and I can have. Mm-hmm. And you add a 4th person, and all of a sudden that jumps to 6 conversations. You trust me on the math. And that's why I say it gets easier in time. The more, you talked about, hey, I know 3 people and this happened, when all of a sudden that became 30 people that which isn't a huge number. 30 is not huge. The potential for making connections amongst those 30 people, not that everybody's going to connect, but the likelihood that it can happen certainly increases.
Yep. Yeah. And the other value too is, I think a lot of people think about networking and the value of being able to sell. But there's a lot of networking value being able to buy. I recently bought a house, and I cannot imagine what buying a house would be like working with strangers. So there were 2 strangers involved in the entire house buying process. The septic guy, who was introduced to us by the seller, and the person we rented the U-Haul truck from. Other than that, we knew the seller. I previously knew the real estate agent, the mortgage guy, my insurance guy, home inspector. Everyone involved in it was someone I knew, and so I trusted them. So with the mortgage, especially because, it's 2020 that I bought a house, during the course of the mortgage underwriting process, I had a significant change in my source of income, which if I just had some guy from Rocket Mortgage or whatever, then I'm sure they're a perfectly good company, but they're somewhat impersonal. If I said, some guy from a big bank, you would have been like, your income changed. Sorry, tossing this one out. Next. Whereas because I had a relationship with Mike Mish, my mortgage guy, Mike Mish, my mortgage man. That way it gets to be alliterative. From a local bank, he was, as the changes came through, and he'd just be like, "Hey, we're doing this now." And I'd say, "Great." He'd be like, "Actually, we're doing this now." Cool. I didn't have to ask, "Hey, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? What's going to happen? How's it?" Mike, I trust you. I know you're going to take care of me. I don't need to watch everything and be going on websites and reading and asking people, "Hey, what's going to happen?" I could work with people I knew and trusted because we had an existing relationship. And I knew and trusted my realtor. I knew and trusted my mortgage person. Same thing. I found a mechanic I know and trust, and it was in my network. So if I have an issue with my car, it's not like, oh man, now I'm going to the dealership and who knows what's happening there. Spin the wheel of fortune at the dealership. Right. It's, I know I go to Charles. He's going to tell me what the deal is, what needs to be fixed, what doesn't need to be fixed. And he's going to treat me fairly. And so by having those connections, in some ways, all networking is making commerce like it was 50, 100, 200 years ago. Because in the old days, there was this reputational credit, basically. You didn't cheat someone in your town because everyone would know about it. Your town might have had 2,000 people. And if there were two mechanics and one was, a little sleazy, well, everyone's going to hear about it because everyone knows everyone. And I think people don't realize that most people know populations have ballooned over the last 100 years, but the effect that has, in the old days, 40,000, Groton has 40,000 people in it. 40,000 used to be a mid-sized city. Right. Now 40,000 is a smallish town. And so that totally changes how people interact. And so networking is basically a artificial structure to reincorporate that reputation connection, human connection, to rehumanize commerce and interaction. So it is kind of artificial, but it has to be because our country now has 330 million people and not 30 million people.
Right. Well, you make a good point. We had these small little towns, and if you look on a map, they're all about 15 miles apart or so, because that's what you could travel with a horse and carriage.
Right. Yeah.
And so if people weren't going to drive, they weren't going to take a day to go 15 miles to, well, they didn't need mechanics then, but to find somebody to shoe their horse. You get what I'm saying? I mean, if your reputation was everything, in that little town. And now it's, with 40,000 people, it's large enough that, to an extent, even if you do a bad job, there's enough people to make a living. May not be a great living, and you're always having to replace clients that you're losing, but it's still a living, if you will. One of the things you talk about in the book is the phrase you use is only sometimes be closing. And in the footnote, you reference the book Glenn Ross, the Alec Baldwin quote. Yep. His quote was always be closing, ABC, and yours is only sometimes be closing. You want to elaborate on that, if you will?
Yes. Yeah. So always be closing is very sexy advice. He's up there, he's yelling, he's banging the board, put down that coffee, coffee's for closers. It just sounds awesome. And because the message sounded so good, a lot of people took it like, oh, it must be a good message because it's fun. But it's not actually a good message. Because it's terrible sales advice. If you're going in there like, I'm always closing, I'm going to get them, put the line, put the name on the line that is dotted. Then you're thinking about the customer as a target. You're thinking about them in the way a lion thinks about a gazelle. And people can feel that, especially now, because sales is no longer a new thing. People have been sold to their entire lives at this point. So if you come on salesy and you're always closing, they're like, ugh. And in some businesses, you can kind of shoehorn them into a sale. As you said, there's some where you can just kind of go from one client to the next. But in most businesses, if you want repeat business, if you want referrals, you got to treat people right and not always be closing. And that's I think in some ways how salespeople got a bad name too, because like many things, the people who make movies have no idea about the topic they're making the movies about. War movies are the same way. And we're gotten away from that, but war movies 50 years ago where soldiers are like, oh, I love being a soldier, so much glory and awesomeness. And then people are actual soldiers like, what? It's not glorious, it's terrifying.
Well, then Vietnam hit, right?
Yeah. And it's the same thing with sales. But you go into a lot of sales organizations and they have that culture, like always be closing and third place, you're fired. And it's got that really aggressive attitude. A lot of places with aggressive salespeople, it's because you have aggressive management pushing on them to be aggressive. The car industry is a great example of that. When I sold cars, I did well because I wasn't aggressive. And I did a lot of what I called the boomerang close. Because my manager taught me that we want to make people feel like they can leave at any time. The way the floor was laid out, there were 5 exits from the room in different directions. So he wanted to make clear that people understood, like there's 5 doors. You can get up this chair and go that way, that way, that way, or that way, and get out of the dealership and be on your way. No one's going to stop you. No one's going to corner you. You can leave anytime you want. And I'd have customers who they seem to like it, but like, yeah, we want to look at the other car. We want to go down the street and visit that dealership. And I'd be like, cool, I'm here till 8. See you then. And they'd say, no, well, we're going to look, we might get that car. And I'm like, sure, you might. See you later. Because I knew what dealership they were going to, and it was a high pressure dealership. And 8 times out of 10, they'd come back to me almost, dragging themselves in the door. Please, Michael, sell me a car. Get me out of the market, please. I don't want to do that again. Because they got beat up there. There's I don't know what happened, but I'm picturing people like banging shoes on desks and what can we do to make a deal right now? And just all that kind of the worst part of the car business. And they drive people out and straight back to me. And of course, I'm sure it made sales because you only buy a car every 3 to 5 years. So you forget how bad it was and you go back. But if you just talk to me and I was really nice, and then you go down the street and they're really aggressive, you'd be like, let me go back to the nice guy.
Right.
I want to go back to the guy who, I want to hear from again. Not the salesman I'm going to take the car and then say, never call me again. And I found it very effective to sell cars that way by just being a nice person. I know, crazy strategy, but not being a jerk. And so that's a lot. And I've been part of other organizations where I've had managers who are trying to push me to be aggressive and to push harder and, put the screws on me. And oftentimes it's a simple matter of people just want to feel like they got a deal.
Yeah.
Usually the car is 22.7 is the sticker price. And if we give them a 22.5, they'd feel like they won something. It's just a matter of listening to the customer, understanding what they need. They'll tell you what you need to do to sell them. Most people are just not good enough liars to not tell you why they're not buying if you get them talking enough.
Well, people want to buy, they don't want to be sold, I think is really what it boils down to. And, it used to be that everybody sold cars the hardcore way. Mm-hmm. And so that was just what you had to deal with. And then somebody like you comes along, and you create a competitive pressure that people need to meet. So I think in time, people start to take on this notion of sometimes be closing as opposed to always be closing. And maybe even gets better than that, where it's like, I never have to be closing because people need cars, right? It's not, it is a lot. Certain cars are luxury items. I get it. But a car in and of itself is not a luxury. It's a necessity. And
they're coming into a car dealership, as my mother said when I started selling cars, nobody goes to a car dealership to buy groceries.
Right.
If they're in a car dealership, they're looking to buy a car. Nobody's just looking, because I don't think I ever met one person who went to the car dealership like, no, I don't have any money, I don't need a car, but I just like looking at cars. Like, why go to a car dealership to look at cars? It doesn't make any sense. If you're looking at a car, you're looking for a car. And then it's just a matter of don't stop them from doing what they came to do. Yeah.
Well, let's shift gears here a little bit, talk about you. I know back in February, you had a conference, Conference 21, and wanted to just give you an opportunity to kind of talk about your business and, how people can refer things to you. You're not selling cars anymore, so
I am not selling cars. Yes, Conference 21 in February went very well, and so I do a few different things. I run conferences, obviously, which AmSpirit was a sponsor of our February one, which was great. Hopefully, the start of a beautiful relationship, as well as I do coaching. And the coaching I do is I help people to really discover themselves and their economic power, is the kind of new age woo-woo way of saying it. But there's a lot of people out there who kind of limit what they can do. They believe, I need to get a job, or, I don't know if I can do that, or they just can't stay focused. They think they can for a week and then lose their focus, get distracted. So what I can help people with is to stay focused on their greatness, on their strength, on what they can do. Because oftentimes, people know what their opportunity is. It's a question of how do I find it? So I'm kind of the jack of all trades coach. I can help refer them out. That's part of being a connector. So if they need marketing, I can refer them to someone who's really a marketing specialist, or maybe they don't need a marketing specialist. They just like, I don't know how to use Facebook at all. I need basics. Well, I can teach them the basics of building an online brand and that kind of thing. If they really want to lean into that, I got people to refer them to. If they really want to lean into, direct mail advertising, I can have people I can refer them to. If they really want to lean into paid advertising, I have people to refer them to. So whatever it is, I've got people to refer out to. But oftentimes, especially with solopreneurs, the thing they need most is someone to just check in with. If you're working by yourself, then who do you talk to? Most people aren't entrepreneurs. So if you're an entrepreneur and you go to talk to your friends, they're like, I don't even know what you do, let alone how to help you with your problems. Why don't you get a job? How do you do this? But one of my true passion is, and I have this mission on my website, is that I want people to, I want to basically eliminate the need for minimum wage. We can debate what the minimum wage should be, if there should be one, all that kind of thing. But I believe that in the modern economy, the way it's structured, if people knew more about their opportunities, the minimum wage would be irrelevant. You wouldn't need to fight for 15. You just wouldn't take a job that paid less than 15. Anyone who has a car can go do Uber Eats or Roadie or any of a dozen different apps. If you don't like delivering food, you can deliver packages. You don't like delivering packages, you can do are you handy? There's handyman type apps. There's all kinds of different things you can do. And 2020, or in the COVID times, is a little trickier. There's some things you can't do, but we're coming up on the vaccine. We're coming up on putting COVID behind us. So we're going to get back to ordinary times. And a lot of people say, well, because of COVID, I'm like, cool. What was your excuse in 2019? There's a lot of people out there in that situation, but there's so many things you can do. And most of these app gig type things pay $15 to $22 an hour. So when people are saying, well, I have to take a job and they're only paying $10 an hour, don't take it. If nobody took $10 an hour jobs, they'd have to offer more because nobody would be stocking the shelves and working at the registers and whatnot. So that's more of my passion because, by its nature, the people who are working $9 an hour jobs can't pay for me as a coach. But that's kind of my mission. And then for the people who are a little further down the road, who are building a business and getting into entrepreneurship, that's more of what my business is helping them discover the next stage opportunities. Once they've found those ways to support themselves and kind of take their own economic destiny, keep them focused, keep them on track, and give them someone to bounce ideas off of, and someone say, hey, this opportunity came up. Because that's one of the challenges in business. So many opportunities come at you. You get 15 opportunities coming at once. You can effectively do one, maybe two of them. You do three, you're going to fail at all three. So, But who do you ask? Because everyone has a vested interest. So I like to be that person. I do coaching groups because then it's not just me, it's other entrepreneurs in the group who can provide their insights. And sometimes someone else in the group will ask a question that you didn't even think to add. You knew so little about that area, you didn't even know what the question was, let alone the answer. So someone else asked the question and you say, oh, I get it now. Oh, that's cool. Now I know that exists. I mean, some people, they don't know what TikTok is as an app. And if they knew what it was, they discovered it would be really powerful for them, but they don't even know that it exists. If you don't know what Uber is, then you're like, oh, I love driving around. I love talking to people. If only there's a way to make money doing that, but I don't want to be a cab driver. That sounds miserable. Oh, Uber. Yeah. But it's miserable because you don't want someone else to give you 8-hour shifts and tell you when to do it. So some people might say, oh, that's exactly what I want to do. Or some people really like grocery shopping. They're like, I like picking out just the right fruit and just the right vegetables. And I like having a list and checking things off. Some people are natural born Instacart people because that's just what they love to do, but they don't know what Instacart is. So, those are examples in the gig world, but it's in business too. Some people like, oh, I'm great on camera, but I can't afford to hire a videographer and do a TV ad. Well, have you done Facebook Live? Facebook Live? What's a Facebook Live? How do I do that? So a lot of it is just kind of putting people together, sharing those ideas. And that's kind of a lot of the coaching I do. So I'm looking for people who are looking for kind of, sometimes I use the phrase business therapist. Now, I'm not actually a therapist. Therapist is a licensed thing, I think. I'm not actually a therapist. But to give you a sense of what I do, I'm not a marketing coach. I'm not a finance coach. I don't teach specific skills. I'm more sort of the resource to bring everything together to help work through problems and to that kind of broad stuff. And then if you need a finance coach, I got one. If you need a marketing coach, I've got 12, 20. I don't know. I know a few of them. But I have all those different resources to tie in together.
All right. Well, we're running out of time here. Let me just summarize it this way. This is Michael Whitehouse. He is a guy who knows a guy. And that's his website. I will put that in the show notes. Website's Guy Who Knows a Guy. Appreciate you being on the program today.
Yeah, it's been great to be on the program. Yeah, and the website, there's no the. It's just www.guywhoknowsaguy.com. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AMSPIRIT.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connections. All rights reserved.